In September 331 BC, after conquering Phoenicia and Egypt, Alexander marched east, penetrating deep into the Persian Empire. Just as his forces were about to cross the Tigris River, reconnaissance reports reached him that the Persian king Darius had amassed another massive army and was preparing for a decisive confrontation with the Macedonians. The two armies finally met in a vast field near the village of Gaugamela in a final clash between two of the most powerful powers of classical antiquity. At the beginning of 331 BC, the Macedonian forces returned to the rich Nile Valley. The Egyptian satrap made no attempt to oppose Alexander, seeing the Macedonian as a liberator rather than a conqueror, and Egypt was not the most loyal of the Persian states. After the crushing defeat near Issus, the Persian king Darius changed course and attempted to halt Alexander's extraordinary invasion through diplomatic means. However, the Macedonian king rejected Darius's generous terms 3 times, and as winter approached, he began making plans for the next Babylonian campaign. After all preparations were complete, the Macedonian force, recovered and well-equipped, returned to Phoenicia in early April. It is worth noting that Alexander paid great attention to the logistical aspect of his conquests, an aspect often overlooked. Maintaining a force of this size in excellent condition for years away from home required exceptional planning and skillful management. The Macedonian army remained on the coast as long as possible, using the fleet to provide supplies. Darius was well aware of Greek movements, and by the time Alexander crossed the Euphrates, the new Persian army was being prepared. The King of Kings expected the Macedonians to advance along the river directly to Babylon and decided to employ scorched earth tactics by ordering the plunder of the Euphrates Valley. However, the prosperous cities along the riverbanks were well fortified, making gathering supplies extremely difficult. Alexander chose a northern route, which, although lengthy, included rural settlements that provided easy access to food and water. Upon hearing the unexpected news, Darius immediately left Babylon and headed north, along the east bank of the Tigris River. He assigned a strong cavalry unit under Mazaeus, the governor of Babylon, to guard the northern crossings of the Tigris and plunder the east bank, hindering the Macedonian advance. However, Mazaeus failed to confront the Greeks during the crossing, and in mid-September Alexander reached the east bank of the river. Aware of the impending confrontation, Darius began searching for a suitable site for the upcoming battle. He set up camp on a wide plain near the village of Gaugamela and began preparations. Meanwhile, Alexander's forces captured a Persian reconnaissance party and learned that Darius was encamped 30 kilometers, 19 miles, to the east. The Macedonian king immediately dispatched his scouts and advanced toward the enemy. The camp was established behind a hill about 10 kilometers from the presumed battlefield. After a few days of rest in late September, Alexander departed for the Persian positions. Mazaeus' detachment guarded the hill separating the two armies, but when the Persian nobleman saw the entire Macedonian army approaching, he withdrew without a fight and returned to the camp. Capturing the hill was an advantage, but Darius still controlled open fields more suitable for fighting with his larger army. Thus the hill was important, but an acceptable loss. Alexander captured the hill and, after a quick inspection of the surrounding area, decided to set up a temporary camp there. This maneuver gave him a significant advantage, as the high ground afforded him a good view of the Persian camp and the deployment of his forces. Furthermore, the hill was ideal for defensive purposes, so Alexander took his time and prepared for battle with ease, ensuring his soldiers had adequate food, rest, and mental health. Conversely, due to Mazaeus' failure, Darius was under constant threat of a surprise Greek attack, even at night, so his troops were forced to remain on alert for battle. Of course, Darius had superior numbers, powerful cavalry, and suitable terrain, but his army had no choice but to wait for the first Macedonian move, as storming the hills was not an option. The sun slowly set over the horizon as Alexander discussed the upcoming battle with his officers. His deputy Parmenion is said to have recommended a night attack to surprise the Persians, but Alexander rejected the idea as too risky. The Macedonian leadership approved the attack the next morning. The night fell, and the first rays of sunlight illuminated the battlefield. It was October 1st. The Persian army had already begun to form and spent the night awaiting the Macedonian attack, which never came. Darius effectively leveraged the power of his vast empire, mustering up to 100,000 men to fight for their king. 10,000 professional and immortal infantry, along with a few thousand Greek mercenaries, formed the core of the Persian centre. But the true strength of Darius's army lay on the flanks. Over 30,000 skilled cavalrymen from various Persian states posed a serious threat, especially on such a vast, flat battlefield. Darius also possessed hundreds of Indian chariots and up to 15 elephants, although these animals likely did not participate in the battle. The rest of his army consisted of various infantry units drawn from tribes inhabiting the Achaemenid Empire, although their combat prowess was questionable. Given the size of the Persian army, command was divided between Darius and his two trusted generals, Mazaeus and Bessus. We could spend another 5 minutes discussing the precise positions of the Bactrian or Parthian cavalry in the Persian battle line, but as is often the case in battle, time is of the essence, and at that moment the sun was approaching noon. Alexander finally awoke from his slumber, and the refreshed Macedonian army abandoned the hill and began to deploy. 40,000 infantry and 7,000 cavalry formed a diagonal battle line, with the right wing facing the Persian centre. To avoid possible encirclement, both wings were appropriately reinforced and slightly bent back. The disciplined Sarissa phalanx occupied the centre of the Macedonian army, supported by strong Hypaspist units. The cavalry was divided into two wings, Thessaly units on the left and the companions on the right. The second line was occupied by Thracian and Illyrian infantry. As in previous battles, command was split between Alexander and Parmenion. To gain an advantage in the encirclement, the Macedonian king began moving his lines to the right. But Darius immediately responded by expanding his left flank and matching the enemy's movements. Darius levelled the battlefield and removed any obstacles to the use of more effective chariots, preventing the Macedonians from leaving the prepared ground. The Persian cavalry advanced and attacked Alexander's extreme right. Fierce fighting ensued with no clear winner. However, over time the Macedonian cavalry gained the upper hand, defeating some Persian units, although suffering heavy losses. Darius, seeing the danger on his left, sent all his chariots to attack the centre of the Greek army. However, this attack was unsuccessful. The defenders opened their ranks, allowing the attackers to penetrate them and shower them with javelins. Following the chariots, the Persian right wing, led by Mazaeus, attacked Parmenion's flank, killing many Greeks and forcing the Macedonian commander to retreat. Parmenion was in a real predicament, outnumbered and partially surrounded, but it wasn't the first time he had been forced to fight in difficult conditions. His wing fought bravely, somehow repelling the Persian attack, albeit at a heavy cost. Darius then noticed that Alexander was moving his wing to the right, while Parmenion remained on the left, creating a gap in the centre of the Macedonian army. Seeing this as a weakness, the Persian king rushed his immortal units to exploit the breach. But this was a deception. This exposed the centre of Darius's army. Alexander had been waiting for such an opportunity, so he quickly mobilized his cavalry, reinforced by the remaining units of his wing, and attacked the Persian centre, where Darius's royal guard was exposed. Despite the support of the second line, the momentum of the Macedonian attack quickly broke the Persian line. Darius quickly realized the danger and fled the battlefield, just as he had done 2 years earlier. Alexander immediately pursued Parmenion, but soon overcame his temptation and mounted a horse to assist Parmenion's flank. Fierce fighting continued on the Macedonian left flank, and when relief finally arrived, the remaining Persian forces were quickly defeated. Although Darius managed to escape again, complicating Alexander's political plans to crown himself king of Persia, the military might of the Achaemenid Empire was crippled. The Macedonians controlled the major cities of Mesopotamia and Persia. After a brilliant display of strategic and tactical prowess near Gaugamela, Alexander effectively ended the dominance of the mighty Persian Empire in less than 5 years, but its subjugation did not satisfy his lust for power.